most of the upper lower peninsula has transmission congestion and doesn't get the power it needs. So if it can't get that far, it certainly can't get across the bridge and up to the UP.
So is the issue more that the power getting to Michigan in general is there's limited avenues? Is that because I thought the issue with the UP was that when they decided not to use that generation source, that the only route was through Wisconsin.
Correct.
But that seems to me that.
But that's the closest route.
Right. Okay. But that means that there wasn't a route even from anywhere else, it sounds like, to getting into Michigan. It's more like the national power grid you're saying. It's that there's certain areas that have power, and it's whether they get here through the UP or the LP, it doesn't really matter. We just aren't getting.
Right. They're kind of like at the end of the line.
Yeah.
All right. And at least they're land connected to Wisconsin, and there is transmission coming from Wisconsin that can supply them.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was Wisconsin didn't want to pay for it.
Right.
And so they convinced MISO to make the Upper Peninsula of Michigan a separate billing area, separate tariff area.
Mm-hmm.
And so they passed a lot of the expense of sending electricity through the transmission to the Upper Michigan residents. So
could the same thing happen to the Lower Peninsula? Because there's only, what, 2 states that border us to the south? So.
Yes, they could. And that's one of the reasons that we've been advocating that Michigan shouldn't be charged for all the transmission that's being built in Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, because it just keeps going east and west. There's not that many routes that bring it north, so we don't benefit from it. So why should we be paying for something that we don't get any benefit from? And Michigan kind of put themselves in this position when they passed Public Act 295 with respect to renewable energy and energy efficiency. They said that the only solutions we can use in Michigan have to be generated in Michigan. So then any outside sources are saying, any outside sources say, well, why would we build anything into Michigan? They can't use our supply anyway. It has to be built in Michigan in order to use it in Michigan. So we kind of shot ourselves in the foot a little bit with that.
Is it within our purview, and I don't know if it is, but is it appropriate for us through the newsletter that goes out or the blog or any of those avenues that we communicate with our customers, is it appropriate for us to help educate them on what's going on? And maybe, I mean, I know we're not in the role of advocacy, but... Right.
I've thought about it, and we can put some basic information on there, but I don't think that most people are
paying attention.
Well, not even necessarily paying attention, but aren't knowledgeable enough about what the issues are to understand what the potential solutions might be. So how far do you go with that in terms of trying to, you know how difficult it is to understand what's going on in the electric business and in our industry. So how can we foster that education in our customers? So I don't know. We've talked about it, but I don't know a good way at this point.
So what are some better solutions than a power line?
Well, the better solutions are to build generation in the UP, and then you don't have to worry about having transmission. But that doesn't benefit those that own transmission if you build generation. So one of the things that...
We need a biodigester out there.
Yeah, right.
Really big one?
Really big one. Well, one of the things that's... I can't say that it's not fair, but it's peculiar about the MISO and how it works is that they collect a tariff to cover maintenance of transmission, because their job is to keep the grid running, and you keep the grid running by having transmission. So when you build transmission, you get an automatic 12% return on your investment through MISO. They take the cost of your construction to build the transmission, and they build that into a rate that they pass on to all the customers in their territory, which is now 13 states. So it ends up being a small increment to every individual, but it promotes building transmission. And so it's hard to find that fine line between building the transmission you need and charging people appropriately for their benefit, and allowing transmission to be built anywhere somebody wants to build it, and just passing that small incremental cost on to all the customers, because in their mind, it's not that big a deal. So that's a fight that we've had in Michigan for a number of years, that we're paying for all this transmission that's being built throughout the Midwest to bring wind from Nebraska to New Jersey, but we don't see any benefit from it, but yet we have to pay for it. So there's a kind of an anomaly with the fact that transmission builders like to build as much as they can, because who wouldn't want to get a 12% return on your investment for every dollar you invested?
But you're eventually going to run out of things to transmit. I mean, if you don't generate.
Right, so
Yeah.
it's a win-win for the transmission companies, but it's hard to convince people that that's not always the solution. So in this case, we think the generation in the Upper Peninsula is a better solution.
I'm sure someone's done a statistic where they compared the cost that Michigan pays towards this MISO transmission versus the percent of those actual new transmission that's been built over the last how many years that provide energy here. Because from what you're saying, it sounds like it's like, maybe like 20 to 1 or something like that.
Right.
That, very little of whatever we put into this effort is we're getting back. And
exactly. Yeah, and we've
it seems like that'd be an easy message for politicians to sell if that's.
Yeah, we've been to federal court on it a couple times and lost.
Okay.
Because
the transmission companies must have a lot of money.
They do.
12%.
Exactly. All right, moving on. I think most of you know, but Valerie Brader, the new head of the Michigan Energy Agency, will be in Lowell for a lunch with Rotary in the Chamber, as well as a tour of the biodigester on July 15th. So I hope that as many of you as possible are able to attend that. It's going to be at the Grand Balut.
Cost is $15.
$15 per person. I think we'd probably cover that for board members if you would like to attend. We have some staff that would like to attend, so it should be a good day. APPA, the Lineman's Rodeo, was a great event. We gave our biodigester presentation. We had a really good response. There were probably 100 people in that breakout session. Tim Muchler, our new lineman apprentice, performed for his first time at the rodeo and did a great job. It's now official that we received the designation of APPA's RP3 Top Award, the Platinum Award.
I thought the diamond was I thought it went
gold, platinum, diamond.
Oh, is it?
I think we're the diamond award.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which is actually the top.
We're number one.
We're number one. I thought the number one was platinum, so we'll just change that word to diamond then.
Thank you, Greg Canfield, because I thought, I'm reading that, I'm going, because I was always thinking platinum is, but they have it as diamond is the highest.
I mean, they always tried to convince me that the platinum credit card was the best.
Best, right.
They don't have a diamond credit card.
That's right.
Let's see those soon, huh?
Right. Okay. System generation upgrade in progress on the back page. The biodigester continues to struggle a little bit, getting over the hump of 50% capacity. They had intended to have that goal met by June 1st, and they haven't. They're not any much farther than they were last month when we talked. They're still making some minor modifications to try and establish the best environment for the critters. We had an overflow of the IFAS tank, the one outside, again in the last 30 days, and we've had some feedstock pipes in the inside of the building get clogged with grease and fats. So they're continuing to struggle with some problems. I talked to Greg Northrup today, and they're working on some solutions. They have identified, they think, what the problem is, and it's an engineering design problem. Again, as we've talked about before, most of the other biodigesters had a different feedstock makeup than we did. We're not only the first biodigester of this type in the United States, but we're probably the first in their design history that has used this combination of biofeeds. So the fats, oils, and grease are giving them a little problem. The system was designed It has what's called a 360, is it DX or DT, Tom?
DT360.
DT360 system, which is supposed to take out the solids as the flow of the material comes from the reflow tank. And the design was that they thought they only needed to take out about 50% of those solids, and the rest would be assimilated in the system and either broken down in one of the other wastewater treatment portions of the facility or taken out at the end when they produce the digestate. But the fact is that this DT360 was designed to take out smaller particles, and it's getting clogged with large particles, and so it's not being able to effectively take the solids out of the system, and that's what's causing the IFAS tank to back up. That's what's causing it to foam and overflow once in a while. That's what's causing the odor. So what they're going to be doing in the next week or two is putting another system at the end of the system right now, where the digestate comes out. They have a filter and a press system that squeezes the water out of the solids and then puts the solids are scraped off, and that becomes the digestate. But they're going to put another type of press upstream of this DT360 to take out large solids before the mixture gets to this DT360 system, which is supposed to take out the smaller solids. And so they hope they will be able to, or the design now is to have the DT360 system working properly by only getting the type of solids that it was designed for, by taking out these bigger solids first. So that's the hang up right now. That's what's causing the odor on the outside that pops up occasionally. I don't know if anybody has had any reports in the last week, but they've started doing work on that this week. Greg Northrop was there today. He walked around the top of the IFAS tank. It was all appeared to be doing what it was supposed to be doing now, and so they think they're on the right answer. So they've revised their scheduled date to be July 1st. They understand that we have this event going on July 15th, and so they're doing everything they can to have the facility in shape and running as it should be by July 15th. So that's the status on the biodigester.
Are they still planning to cap that tank?
The outside tank was they never planned to cap the outside tank. They are going to cap the inside tank, and that's one of the things that will be done during the next 30 days.
And that's the one that overflows, right?
The one that's outside is the one that overflows, but it overflows because it has too many solids, and so by removing the solids, in theory, it's not supposed to overflow and it's not supposed to have an odor. So they're going to try that first. If that still doesn't solve the problem 100%, then they'll look at capping it. But they're trying to get the system to work like it was designed to work first, and then look for other ways to mitigate problems once they get the system working the way it's supposed to.
Okay, I didn't realize there was two tanks, because remember last time they were talking about capping tank, but I guess that's just the inside one.
That's the fog tank on the
tank.
inside.
Okay.
Right.
The outside tank is the stuff that's coming from the lighthouse.
Okay, well, that's still fog too. Well, it's specific fog, I guess, right?
Right. Okay. We did the policy review, long-term natural gas supply. Last month I indicated I'd bring you an update on where we stand with regards to acquiring long-term gas supply. There have been several developments over the last 18 months, and so kind of put together a little summary for you. Some of you weren't here when we started this with the combustion turbine, so I tried to give you some history. Currently our natural gas is supplied at the Lowell Energy Center by Consumers Energy. They provide a sufficient volume of natural gas to run our combustion turbines as peakers during the peak months of the year, May through September. That was what the original design and intent was to do. That requires a volume of about 100 MCF per hour of gas, and they supply us that volume of gas at 15 pounds per square inch through their system. The turbines ultimately require an input pressure of about 200 to 240 psig, so we have a compressor on site that compresses the gas to get it to the required turbine input pressure. We're currently leasing a compressor to facilitate that need for the solar combustion turbine. We need a second compressor for the Rolls-Royce. If this system was to remain static the way it is, we need a second compressor to facilitate that turbine, or we'd have to be at a point where we buy a new compressor that would facilitate both combustion turbines at the same time. The reason we're leasing this compressor is because our ultimate goal has been, as part of our strategic plan, to provide backup generation to our customers in the case of an emergency. So obviously emergency could happen at any time of the year, not just those months of May through September. So the goal is to get there. One of the things we have to solve or resolve is how we're going to get gas supply for those months. And so we chose to lease that compressor until we find out where we're going to be in that total process. We've been pursuing a number of options that would provide natural gas. Unfortunately, we have several possibilities. The downside is that the gas business is pretty complex, and some of these options are difficult to put in place and require other players to be involved, not just ourselves. It's not just something we can go out and necessarily solve by ourselves. The best option at this point would be for the consumers to come to us and say they'd upgrade the infrastructure necessary to meet our needs. And in the big picture, I think that would be a good thing for us and them. I have a hard time understanding not wanting to provide the infrastructure that a client needs in order to grow. I mean, that's what we do. When we have customers that are growing, we try and provide the infrastructure they need to facilitate that. We buy new transformers, we put in lines to be able to facilitate Atwood, and so that's just a business model that makes sense to me. So I struggle with that, but so far that hasn't happened with consumers. They've offered us several possibilities. We've worked through a number of scenarios, but none of the options that they've offered us to this point provide us what we need. Never have they been able to provide us 100 MCF, 12 months a year at 200 psig. They just have not been able to come up with a solution for that need. So I've taken another tact. I'm starting to work at consumers from the top down. Was able to get in to see some of the people in the higher up levels of the Michigan organization, and with the help of Jim Weeks at MMEA, we're trying to present our case there. They were surprised that was our situation, to the extent that I'm optimistic that maybe we'll be able to work out some other solution coming at it from that direction. So that's one possibility we're still working on. In the meantime, we've also been looking at other opportunities with other gas suppliers to try and develop the need, a mechanism to fill the need that we have. We finally came up with a possibility with another provider, and we were to the point where I think they were pretty close to pulling the trigger on it. The problem that developed was that they needed at least 2 or 3 other potential customers to participate in that line to be able to make it economically feasible for them. And those players dropped out at the end when the proposal was made. And it turned out to be too costly for us, at least at that point in time, which was about a year ago, or maybe only 9 months ago. But the cost to us would have been $20,400 per month for 10 years. So close to $3 million for us to get that system up and running and to us. So I didn't feel at the time that that was something that we were in a position to be able to do with just having taken on the biodigester and still finishing up on the combustion turbines. That was a little bit too rich for us to be able to manage at that time. So again, we're still working with that group, and we've come up with another option that would require less development cost on our side to partner with them to get gas to us. We haven't reached final numbers on that, so when I get that, I'll give you information on that. One of the things that's difficult is the gas price varies depending on where your supply comes from. And you would think that the closer the supply, the cheaper the price, but that's not necessarily so. In the gas business, there's what they call supply hubs. And if you can get your gas directly from a supply hub, then you get a better wholesale rate than you do someplace else. Everybody along the line picks up a little bit of fee for the line that you're using that they own. So the best option for us when we were looking at this original scenario was to get our gas directly from the Joliet hub, and that would have given us the best price. The option that we're looking at now is getting the gas supplied to us from a much closer place, but that closest gas transmission line goes back to being consumers. And so that's not necessarily the cheapest place to buy our gas. It would have been cheaper to buy it at the hub in Joliet. So another factor that we'd have to weigh the pros and cons from when we get that final estimate of utilizing a shorter line to get gas supply. The option's still there. It's just a function of finding the way that it's going to work for us. Third option, or what I would call a fallback position or emergency contingency, is that there is a system out there where you can mix a certain volume of air with propane, liquid natural gas, that simulates natural gas. And so we've had an estimate to have that done. In order to be able to facilitate both combustion turbines, it's about $400,000 for each turbine. So it'd be a $800,000 expense to put in a system that would allow us to vaporize propane, mix it with a certain amount of oxygen, and put it into our turbines and be able to run. We'd have to have a capacity of storing about 60,000 gallons of propane. That was all part of the cost, having the tanks and so forth and the plumbing to be able to do that. And that would allow us to run for about 2 days before you'd have to have those tanks refilled.
Wow.
So that's a kind of an expensive solution, both in terms of the $800,000 cost and also the cost of the propane itself. But it's better than being without electricity. So when we get all of our possibilities in line and look at the cost-benefit analysis of each one, that'll be one that's in there that we'll look at. But it's not a long-term solution. It's just an emergency or fallback position from my perspective. I have talked to the propane suppliers. It's not a problem. There's enough trucks around. There's enough big trucks around from Alto Gas or someplace that we could get refilled every 2 days if we needed to. So it's not that we would be limited to 2 days runtime. We just have to have those tanks replenished as we're using. It's also possible to mix that vaporized propane with natural gas. So if we had access to some amount of natural gas, and it happened to be a winter month, and we could get 25 MCF through the consumer system and mix that with the propane, then we'd have to use less of the vaporized propane, and the tanks would last longer, like 3 days or 4 days before they'd have to be refilled. So again, another option. but from my perspective, it's more of a fallback option. The another possibility, which is we've talked about briefly, and it was probably a long time ago. Again, maybe Tina and Tamela and Andrew weren't involved at that time. One of the possibilities, and it's a much larger decision in terms of goal and direction of low-line power, would be to invest in a solution that's similar to that first one that I talked about, that the cost to us was $20,400 a month for 10 years. Invest that $3 million into infrastructure that would bring us all the gas we need. And when I say all the gas we need, it's a 6-inch pipe, it's 800 PSIG instead of the 200 that we need, and hundreds of MCF available. So it really turns out to be enough gas to probably power the city of Lowell. And so one of the options would be for us to become a gas supplier. And that's a pretty simple thing to do. It's a filing with the state. You go through the Michigan Public Service Commission, you get a license as a gas provider, and you become like Lakeshore or any of the other solicitors that call you on the phone and say, hey, we can provide you gas cheaper than somebody else. And we could do that. The thing that we would have to do then is sell the gas to our electric customers. And in theory, the way it would work, how it could work is we would then be able to buy gas at this Joliet hub. We would be able to buy it cheaper than most of the people that sell gas in our area. We could sell it to our customers with a small incremental increase in cost to cover that $3 million of infrastructure that we'd have to build over some amortized period of 20 years or 25 years or whatever it would be, and still be able to sell the gas to our customers cheaper than they would get it from, say, Consumers or DTE or some other supplier. So we could offer the same service that we're offering with electricity, only supply gas. And the only risk to us is the cost of the infrastructure to get the gas here, and then the infrastructure necessary to maintain the supply of gas to ourselves at the Energy Center. The way being a gas supplier works is that Consumers still owns the pipe and the lines. They still do all the billing. We're just the name on their bill that shows gas supplier, just like if it was Lakeshore or XXX or any of the other gas suppliers.
But individuals then have to choose that, or a company
but the individuals
has
have to choose that.
Okay.
Yes. So nobody in Michigan has ever done that. We'd be the first. They do it in other states. There's a lot of electric utilities that are also the gas provider for their municipality. But that is one option that would, again, it's more of a long-term thinking process. We'd have to get approvals. We'd have to go through council. We'd have to, any number of things to add gas to our charter as one of our business ventures. But it is something that's perfectly feasible in the state of Michigan to be able to do. And that would be an alternative solution. The last comment that I had that I wanted to mention was I am by no means an expert in gas. I can barely call myself an expert in electricity, let alone gas. But there are people out there who do gas and are consultants. I've been in contact with an organization called Fell & McCord. Their business is managing gas supply, determining least cost supply options, evaluating pricing tariffs, and negotiating gas contracts. That's what they do for a living. We've used them extensively at MPPA. We have used, or they're also the consultant of record for gas supply at Lansing and Holland. And so I would like to at least have them look at some of these options that we've developed or uncovered, and at least have them give us their opinion on them. So I've asked them for a proposal to do that. And from my perspective, that would be our next step, is to have someone else's who's more knowledgeable than me, their expertise, take a look at what we're looking at and give us an evaluation. So
Makes sense.
that's an update on gas supply.
So all these options you talked about for the Joliet hub, depending on what the option is, that would involve building a different size pipeline. Is that what I understand? So you talked about having the 800 PSI pipeline.
The problem in Michigan, yeah. The problem in Lowell is that we are on the dead end of Consumers Line. And they don't have enough capacity on any of the lines that they have now to meet our need. It would
Okay.
it requires them to build new lines. There is an organization, there is a supplier that does have a line to us, to our area, that needs to be upgraded, and it doesn't come into the city because this is Consumers' territory. And so we would have to help pay some development costs to upgrade that line to get the volume and pressure that we need, and we'd have to be a partner in building the line from where their line ends to our Chatham facility. So that's the details of how it would work. Like I said before, the best thing would be if Consumers would say, hey, you know, you guys are going to be using a lot of gas, we'd like to supply you. But they haven't said that yet. Because because they have told us that they can't supply our needs, that allows us technically to go through the Michigan Public Service Commission and say, one, we'd like to be our own supplier, or two, Consumers can't supply what we need, we have the right to look someplace else to some other supplier. So even though this is a Consumers' territory, because they can't supply us, we have the right to look for other options.
So how many other territories join us if we're at the dead end of Consumers?
There isn't any other territories that adjoin us. You're in Michigan, you're either most of the territory in Michigan is either Consumers or DTE. But there are other private pipelines or other private gas suppliers in the system. So they would have to get permission from the Public Service Commission to supply us, but my understanding is that wouldn't be hard for them because Consumers has told us they can't supply what we need.
Right, they currently have a
Okay.
problem. The line comes from Lansing, and it's a 300 PSI line, and in the winter on a cold day, it drops down, I believe, to 50 PSI, so they're already getting the thing sucked dry without us hooked to it. But
Right.
development is going to continue in this area. It makes
Right.
sense for them, whatever their weak link is in their infrastructure, to correct it and pick up a great customer with us, so.
Right, and with the electric industry, I mean, I think it's obvious now that the electric industry is moving towards natural gas.
Mhm.
You know, the coal plants are being shut down, even Consumers is shutting down 7 of their own coal plants. So, the only answer is to have better gas infrastructure. And so if they don't build it, then how are they going to service what's going to be needed in the future? So it's a dilemma to me that I can't put my mind around, but.
So where does everyone, if all the gas comes from Lansing, where does everyone west of us get their gas?
I
If it's all
believe
Consumers,
the
but-
western side, portions of the western side of the state have DTE. I think DTE services
A lot of Grand
a
Rapids.
lot of Grand Rapids up to Ada. My
Okay.
understanding is they have an 800 PSI line that stops at the Grand River at Ada. So,
Okay.
you know, it would be 12 to 15 miles for them to build something to Lowell. And the closest high-pressure line for Consumers is another 12 to 15 miles south of us. You know, they gave us an estimate of $60 million to build a new high-pressure stainless steel pipeline to Lowell. So I can't believe that's the only solution.
So hopefully Consumers will make a decision before it becomes a crisis.
For everybody. I mean,
Right.
my understanding is
They're
this.
talking about all of these
yeah.
potential crises that we
Yeah.
may have in Michigan over the
Right.
next couple of years.
Right,
It's like,
electric crisis, gas
Yeah.
crisis. I mean, my understanding is that there were furnaces whose pilot lights went out in Lowell this winter because there wasn't enough pressure.
We worked on some of those, and I asked the techs, and it was more a problem that the temperature was so cold, frost was getting in the ground and causing stuff to flake off. And it was more individual line problem into the house.
Okay.
Because we had 2 or 3 calls in a day like that, and they had to come out and fix them. And I said, hey, are we sucking the line dry? And he said, no, it's flaking in the lines, it's plugging things up.
Well, that makes sense. Okay, so that was gas supply. D.
Yes.
C, annual health care renewal, we took care of already. Yes, sir.
Could you give us the numbers of the Mega Million winners this month, or this Friday? Because I'm reading here, the healthcare renewal plan was discussed and approved as an action. I mean, this is already, you're pretty, if you could give us the
Right.
Confident.
Mega Million numbers, we could,
Sorry.
We bought telephone poles before it was
He's
approved.
just confident.
I'm sorry.
with those twisties,
Sharon, watch my language.
Better board members.
All
I
right.
have to correct myself every time I see my told. Like power poles.
Sorry, Greg, that's the best I could do.
All right. Well noted. Thank you, Barry. From Food Fight. We're again facilitating that, and it's underway. We're picking up food and dropping off containers. So, thanks, Sharon, for organizing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, also for the recycling event. It was Saturday, May 30th. We had good success that day, even though it wasn't as good as it's been in some of the past. I think that we decided that was the 3rd one that we've done here and the 4th one in the community, so
That's because everybody's cleaned out their shed.
everybody's cleaned out their
Garage
shed
door.
and the garages and
But everybody was so appreciative that we're still
I think
doing
it's a
it,
great
so.
service. I
Yes.
mean,
so
it's-
It was a rainy day too, though.
it was.
Yeah.
It was a rainy day.
Yeah.
was.
So.
People came early before the rain.
One of the things that we talked about last month as well was getting the line shack painted. And so I've secured a bid to do that. And what I wrote in my manager's report was $3,600. The bid actually came in at $4,300 with the repairs that need to be done on the back of the building. So,
and that is who?
that is Anderson Painting as well.
Okay. I mean, and I'm just, my input is I'd like to see us proceed with that
Yes.
because of every Thursday night, the event going over there. And I know that one person in the audience would like to see something besides green.
Yes.
So my thoughts are, if we're having beige,
No buff.
buff, or whatever color, that we have a unified color,
That was my thinking, and
and even at
With pretty trees painted.
And even at 36 or 43, looking at what I know it's much smaller, but looking at the bid of what that
Right.
was, I would have a contingency of actually knowing that would go a little bit higher, because you're working over the water, you're working,
Yeah.
Right, right.
It's a tough job.
It is. And the reason I told you last month that we'd get it done is because I figured any bid would be within my authority, and so I would just make sure that it happened. So I was going to use the buff color, and I felt that would be a good background if we wanted to ultimately put a mural on it. I put a feeler out for people that do murals, and so
Talk to Lowell Arts.
my
Great fun
perspective is that
project.
we'd ultimately have a mural on the backside of it, so
It'd be a
we'll
great,
go ahead and get that done.
great thing to
Great.
do with Lowell Arts, and they
Yep.
could get funding for it.
Couple of other just quick things I want to mention to you. We also have a bid to provide, well, let me back up. Last month, we approved a 12,470 expansion behind the Lowell Baptist Church. I think we approved up to 55,000. And the wire for that, I received that bid, and the low bid was 10,249. So I'm not sure whether that's something I need to have you approve, or because you've already approved the greater amount, I don't have to worry about the individual pieces until we get to a point where it's
I think
over,
if
so.
we-
Well,
Already
if it's part of
approved.
the project, then we already approved
Yeah,
it.
we already
Okay, so
approved it.
that's where so that's why I didn't put it on the agenda, but I just wanted to mention to you, so it was out there and you knew what it was. And then we've also had another contact this last week who's interested in buying our transmission line, our 6 miles of transmission line that go from the substation north. So I'll get you more details as I get information on that, but that's good news from our perspective. There isn't any reason that we have to own that transmission line. If somebody else owns it and maintains it, we still get the electricity through it, and it takes a lot of liability and headaches off of our lab. So,
Which transmission line is this?
It's the one that goes up Alden Nash to the new substation.
Downs roughly.
when our new substation was rebuilt, our transmission came in from the east side of the state through Wolverine, and we changed over to having it from Consumers, so they brought it in from their Downs substation. So we had to
Runs along
build
the high
the
school property.
6 miles of transmission between that Downs substation to our new substation. We bonded for it. It was about $1.8 million, and so it's just $1.8 million worth of assets sitting there that we don't use. I mean, obviously electricity comes in to us through it, but some of it goes through swampland, some of it is hard to reach. We're liable for the maintenance on it, we're liable for the repair on it. I would just soon not own it. So
Does our trucks even reach the height of those poles?
No, and our
So-
linemen are not qualified to work transmission poles.
Right.
So we have to hire
So these
somebody.
like the big metal pole, big metal things you mean, or?
No, they're the
that's
wood
higher
ones, but-
transmission. They're still wood poles. That's up for the 138,000 volt line.
Is that
So are these the ones we had to build the Lara trail around on Alden Nash?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And they go on Alden Nash, they go back and forth a few
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, okay, I know what that is then.
Yeah.
Is that a 12% return for the buyer? That's a pretty good investment for somebody.
It is for
There you
them. We get nothing for it, but.
Well, if they buy it from us, we'd get something.
No, I mean, we don't get 12% because we own it.
know.
All right. If we did, then it wouldn't be such a bad investment.
Sell it to ourselves or something? Is there a creative accounting way to make that happen?
I'll look into that.
Yeah. So hopefully that's on the horizon and we can see something come to fruition on that. And I think that's it for me.
What does the transmission line cost? Like we're selling it, or something in the order of,
Well, it was $1.8 million for 6 miles, so $300,000 a mile.
what would we hope to sell it for?
The offer that we've talked about on the surface was the depreciated value, which would be about $1.4 million.
Okay.
I think it might be down like $1.2 million.
I told him $1.4 million.
Okay. Well, I just want us to,
Some
next
room
month
for
we're
Well,
selling.
I've had some discussions with Dick Wen on it too, and, whenever we sell anything or lease anything, we have to make sure that it's fair market value. So we will have to get it appraised.
Right,
So,
yeah.
But they're interested at $1.4 million, so.
All right, that brings us to our next meeting agenda is in your packet. We meet next month on July 9th. Brings us to board comment. Start with you, Tina.
I have just a couple things. I am really pleased that we did stay within our community and researched for the asphalt. And we took storms in. Great kudos to them that we were able to stay, like I said, within the community. We want to be able to support everybody and give them kudos on that. The other thing was, and I did put down here, paint the building on the river. And that's the one thing that because I do live on the river, and when I'm out kayaking, I look at that building, and I'll come down and have breakfast in the morning, on Sunday morning, what have you. And it's not, I'm not gonna say it's a charming building or it's historically, amazing to look at. However, I often wondered, why didn't we ever paint it decently or put a pitched roof on it and use it for our hot dog cookout when we have, here in October. Why don't we use that as our go-to point to bring people to see, this other building that we do have. So that was just my suggestion. Painting it a drab color would be interesting. A mural would be sometimes interesting too, but definitely, we do have this cool building and this cool setting on the river, and I really would hope that we could, I know putting a pitch roof on it's probably horribly expensive, but it would bring some charm to what's across the river instead of this box that's going to be painted.
Well, my plan was
this
always
color.
my plan was always when the city got around when the city got around to doing something on the west side of the river, that we would put a boardwalk there and a fishing pier out, because what I see out my window every day during the summer is kids that walk up and down here with a fishing pole trying to find a place to get out on that side of the river to fish. And so I thought if we had a fishing deck out there, and we have the base for it where we used to have our pumps, if we just put a fishing pier out there, it would be a great place for kids to be able. So that's one of the reasons we haven't torn it down.
Okay, thank you for not tearing it down. And that's what I have. Thank you.
All right, Tamala.
I want to commend the staff and Greg for thinking about the volunteer service and adding that to the personnel handbook. I think that's great that we are allowing people to go out and volunteer in the community and as part of their work day. I mean, I know it's not a lot, but I think it's a really nice effort to encourage volunteering. The other thing is I wanted to share a little story, and I did email this to Greg the day that I found out, but I think it's important for everybody to know this. I have a friend that is actually moving out of the community just because of life and family and different things. And we were on the phone talking about her move, and she didn't realize I was on the board. And she says, you know what I'm going to miss most about not living in Lowell? And I'm like, well, what? She goes, Lowell Light and Power. Never the answer I expected. And I said, well, that's kind of cool. Like, seriously, why? She goes, well, why do you think that's cool? And I said, because I'm on the board. And I said, tell me why you'll miss Lowell Light and Power. And she has lived in a lot of different communities, and she said that she has never had a more reliable electrical service, and she has really appreciated that. And I just thought that was really cool to hear from a customer that they value that. They noticed the difference when they moved into this community, having lived in other communities, and now she's moving out of the community and is going to miss our service. So I think that's really important for, and I sent an email to Greg because I just thought it was cool and thought he should hear that, but I wanted to make sure the rest of the board knew that too. So, yeah.
Cool.
Good
Thank you
story.
for sharing that.
So that's my 2 cents.
Andrew.
Well, I just want to note that I was one of the people dropping off appliances for the recycling event, so I did appreciate that. Didn't get any rebates because there were 2 little ones, but the folks there seemed to be happy to have company. It was kind of quiet, I guess, in the rain, but we were there in the rain unloading. But no, it's nice to have those options, whether it's the cleanup day or the recycling day and all these things that, otherwise what do you do? So leave it in the basement, I guess, And I was also going to say I'm looking forward to, I know it's going to be a little while, but looking forward to seeing the reports from the both the gas, the consultant, and as well as the GRP, their 5-year study, just because it's good to see how that can evolve over time and what our options are and can be, and especially nice to think that we can think at the scale of, well, do we want to become a gas provider or not? Just, simple question, but kind of a big question, and it's nice that we are in a position, having the local control that we do with our own light and power, that we can kind of ask those questions and make the right decision, and not just kind of wait and see if whoever has the, other larger for-profit company decides what they want to do. So it's just nice to have these options in the community, and I'm glad we keep pursuing them, and we'll see how they turn out. And that's all I've got.
Greg.
Oh, Perry, it looked like you might have a note there.
I have a few.
I was afraid of
that. In the June 3rd viewpoint in the Lowell Ledger,
Mr. Erickson, John Erickson, stated, "I wonder if Lowell Light and Power has ever been approached to share in the cost of the repair to this street." He's referring to North Washington along the cemetery. "Since most of the damage was probably done while their facility was at the city property at the end of North Washington Street, it seems that they should have been required to repair the road when they left. The road had obviously never been built for the heavy truck traffic it provided for the years that Lowell Light and Power used it. I have heard that Lowell Light and Power has a large reserve of funds, and maybe this could be an option for at least some of the repair to the street." Now, and I just thank for that, but I want to just state that our warehouse has not been located in that since 2006. So it's close to 9 years, almost 10 years ago. Lowell Light and Power trucks operate throughout the city. They were, except for the digger truck was located up at that location, but all of our other trucks were located here at our line shack right across from our main offices. Also, the pilot program has, over those years, has which is payment in lieu of taxes, has contributed to the city anywhere from $230,000 to this year. It will probably reach or go over $350,000 that Lowell Light and Power has contributed to the city to be used in their general fund. Also, I just want, in regards to the talking about, that we have all this money in reserve. The city charter, and if you would get the city charters, section 1611 says that we're to try to have an amount around 20% of the undepreciated original cost in cash reserve, so in case of emergencies, and by the it also states that such fund shall not be allowed to fall below the sum of 10%, and we're a little bit over, Steve, a little bit over 10% right now.
Yeah.
I think Lowell Light and Power has done a great job, and we're working towards getting back to that 20%. So Lowell Light and Power doesn't have this great big sum of cash just laying around to be used for anything.
That'd be a really nice letter to the editor for you to write.
Well, I don't want to get into this back and forth. I've done that before with the letter. I just want to just briefly state some of the things that was said there. And our trucks are used throughout the city, and I mean, plow trucks, garbage trucks, UPS. Everybody uses our city streets, and I think that Light and Power has contributed to the general fund to be used for what the city sees fit. So that's I just wanted to touch on that.
I think also, isn't North Washington a county road?
It is from where the city limits is, right at the cemetery, up, and his article does state that Virgins Township did repave a portion of that at some point, and he writes a nice article about the cemetery, how great the cemetery looked and everything, but he does touch on a few things about the Light and Power and the road, and I just wanted to address that. I was on part of the trip that we went out to Sacramento. I thought it was a great trip. Some things that I brought back in seeing that is whether Lowell Light and Power can put an event on that would bring other MPPA utilities together. We attended the Lineman's Rodeo, and Rich did a wonderful job at that, and it was his first rodeo and got a appreciation of what was going on. The technical convention that started on Monday, which most of the linemen were not a part of, their guest speaker was there that talking about safety, and this gentleman was a very great motivational speaker, and he had lost both arms in a flash, in a second, by accidentally touching the wrong wires or having a pole and everything. And I just thought that would be, and Tom was there, and I'm sure that they've come back and expressed their, to our linemen, the importance of, being on the top of your game, from the time you get here to the time you leave. It's dependent on you being at the top of your game to go home to your family. And I would just like to look at maybe us bringing in somebody like that, a motivational speaker, to speak to our linemen and invite the other local companies around to see that. The other is we need to, as a board, we need to set a time to review our general manager. This is coming up at the end of the year, and for the next year. And we always seem to get out, 2 or 3 months after the fact. Well, I think, we should get on that right away. And the other is, I'd like to thank Jim Hall, one of our council members, for attending. He basically is as a council member, is not required, but he attends pretty much every one of our meetings to see what's going on at Light and Power. And again, Jim Hodges, our mayor, attends. He's the liaison between the council. But again, thanks, Jim, for attending. I think it shows your commitment to the city and to Lowell Light and Power. Thank you.
Sure you're done? There's a lot of notes there, Perry.
Well, I think
You must decide.
there was a backside, but Greg touched on some of the things that I was concerned about, and so I don't think it needs
All right.
at this time to be
Good. I want to make sure.
to beat up again. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you. Last month, when you did have your meeting, we were celebrating Dan Desjardins' retirement. And so while I attend most all meetings, I missed that one. It looked like I missed the right meeting. Because
you could have come after this. We're still going at 10:30.
evidently.
We had a marathon.
I just wanted to indicate that to the public and let everyone know that this board does put in a great deal of time, well over 4 hours on your last meeting. And the time and effort and dedication that you guys have, I think, is terrific. And certainly appreciate all of our boards and commissions in this community. But you guys really spent a lot of time, and that handbook updating is not an easy thing to do. Really appreciate the work that you all do. In retirement, also, Betty Morlock will be retiring the end of July. That's just been noted, and so we're looking at bringing one of our own up as the new clerk, and that will be done at Monday night's council meeting. We've got probably the largest agenda that I remember coming up on Monday night, with over 11 items in the new business section. And so we'll be
So
coming.
should we bring you pizza in about 9 o'clock?
You don't really want to. Well, you're welcome to attend, but we'll be talking. We're going to have a public hearing on truth and taxation, fireworks on the Riverwalk Festival street closing, FOIA policy review, 3 different ordinances on site plan review, the cell tower, rezoning properties, police vehicle replacement, yada, yada, yada.
They're just
So-
jealous that we have a longer meeting.
That's right.
They're gonna try to break the record.
Yeah, then there'll be a few appointments. Chairman Canfield is up for reappointment, and he had some hesitation, but I can, well, he said maybe I should consult with the rest of the board, see if he ought to be reappointed, but I do plan on reappointing Chairman Canfield to another 3-year term on Light and Power Board. And thank you for your work, Craig. And I think that's most of the things that we got going. It's a busy time, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
All right. I'm going to touch on a couple things that already have been touched on. Perry and I, along with staff members, went to Sacramento for the APPA convention, and it was great. Congratulations to staff on the RP3 Diamond Award and the Safety Award. high marks there, and that's a great thing. It says a lot about the great job you guys do. Thanks to Rich